Hey guys, so in this video we're going to take a look at one of the coolest new image generators online, and this is the new model from OpenAI. So you can see you can create amazing images like this guy here, and it's a little bit slower than DALL-E 3, but the quality of the images is well worth the wait. Now with this image here, I didn't even need to describe the image. I just brought in the original image, which is the girl with pearl earrings, and it was able to just give me a description of the image and then to start trying out different styles. This is one of the styles that it created, and I actually wanted it to do a portrait, and it did a portrait, and it produced this beautiful portrait image. And that's the kind of versatility you have. You can actually tell it exactly what colors you want inside the image. And I actually told it, look, I want to see this girl wearing a silk dress, and it gave her a silk kimono. There was a little bit of hair at the top, which I felt was not really what I wanted, so I asked it to remove the hair, and it removed the hair exactly as I wanted. The image is pretty good. I think the kimono there looks fantastic. And then I asked it, give it an African girl and make it an African girl with a burgundy dress, and it did that exactly. Wasn't too happy with the face, so we just said, look, just improve it a little bit. Wanted the earrings a little bit larger, and it produced this beautiful image here. Now to access the new model, you can actually use a feature down here which is create image, and sometimes you can just ask it create an image and it will use the new model. You can see here its ability to do text is pretty amazing. I've seen some really impressive demos, but this one was the best one that I got in terms of text. And sometimes the text, it takes a few tries to get it right, but this one I really liked first time. And one of the things you notice when using it is that once it creates an image, inside of that thread, you can ask it to do specific things. So with this particular image, I said, look, create an image. I want it to look slightly dystopian. And then I said, look, take the image, make it more landscape and making it a little bit brighter. And sometimes it just doesn't work all that well. This was an image of King Henry VIII, and that's the famous portrait, and it described it very well, but it had a problem with aspect ratio. So when I asked it to recreate the image is beautiful, but the king's proportions don't look that good. It doesn't quite do 16:9, which would have worked out well in terms of the proportions. So I said, look, make it 16:9 or make the king a little bit less wide, and it just gave the guy still the wrong proportions. Is a bit too wide, and the 16:9 it wasn't able to get there. And another advantage of the new image is that the new image generator is that it doesn't go around doing stupid stuff when you ask it to work with old portraits. In the past, I asked it to work with some older portraits, it just refused to do it. So you can now import images, and you can get it to copy poses. This one here, obviously Leonardo da Vinci, and it will do something very fanciful, like give the portrait a kind of a modern feel. It just refused to do this sort of thing in the past. Now, as well as being more willing to work with older images, this is, I think, block. And I tried to import this with DALL-E 3, it just wouldn't have it. It just would not allow me to work with this image. But I imported this into the new model, and what we were able to do was to create a version of the image using the original. And I think here it's actually taking the original image. It can see the original image, and it's actually creating a copy of that original image, obviously with its own style that I asked it to give the image. And it's managed to capture something of the emotion here of the guy, that sort of surprised look. And it understood the prompt. It understood what I wanted. It understood, in this case, I think, the image prompt. And it was able to make an adjustment of the image so that it looked like an original painting, but it referenced the original image in a way that was very accurate. As you can tell, the emotions of the girls, the AI just isn't up to, it hasn't got the precision with human emotions. We're not there yet. But with this new ability to just get in there and use the image prompt, like image to image almost, you can get some pretty amazing results, and you can play around with them so that they look, you can see the results here. I think looks really cool. Now this is the result that we got just using the text prompt. So I asked it to describe the image, the original painting, and I then took that description, created a completely new thread, and used that description to try to create the image. We don't have the emotions being captured quite as well, just using the text prompt, but we have got, it understood the placing. We want to have this guy over here. We want to have the women on the other side. One of them has a cloth over her head. It was not able to copy the exact style of the cloth. I've not found an AI that can capture that cloth, the square cloth that the woman has, using just the text prompt. But for the most part, I think it did a fairly good job of getting the positions correct. And that's something that some of the older models that I've looked at actually really struggled with. I think we actually did a video on using DALL-E 3, and I think it was the competitor to DALL-E 3, which was Stable Cascade, which produced pretty good images. Now with this image here, we were trying to create a photographic image of a Viking warrior or a Viking beauty, and it produced a realistic image, realistic looking image. I didn't need to prompt for the fur or the leather. It just understood this is what a woman in this time period is going to look like. Very beautiful image with a really nice kind of landscape, really nice sunset happening in the background there. The aesthetics of this particular model are amazing. Now, one thing that's very, very different is that when you start a thread, it just decides. So this is a very old thread that I used for DALL-E 3, and I used this particular prompt with the new model, and it ended up creating this beautiful girl here. But it uses what's gone before. It really kind of sticks to what's gone before. So whereas with the previous model, if you asked it to create an image and then you asked it to create the image again, it will create a very different looking image. With this one, there's always something similar. So this is the painting. It just created a painting. I asked it to create a Viking girl. It produced this beautiful Viking girl. And then I asked it to do the same again, but not mentioning the scepter. But what it did was create another Viking girl in a very similar pose, this time again with the scepter. So it tends to follow what happened before, and that's something very different from what used to happen with the previous version, where it would create a completely new image. And we finished with what I think is probably one of the best images that is created, and this is a picture of a woman in 1920s clothing. I didn't ask the image to be black and white. It just created a black and white image, and the amount of detail inside the image. I've seen this kind of photography with, I think Stable Cascade was able to produce something this good in about the same amount of time as well. But this one, if anything, is slightly better than Stable Cascade. And in some respects, it's a little bit easier to use than Stable Cascade. So I think this is a huge improvement over DALL-E 3. You can still use DALL-E 3 if you really need it, but I think this one is well worth trying out once you get a chance to.